Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson, and I'm your host. It is Thursday, August 28th, very early in the morning, and it's draft season, baby. This is the biggest weekend for drafts heading into the NFL season, starting on Thursday, September 4th. So a lot of you are going to be doing your drafts this weekend, so I thought I would fire up a mock draft here in preparation for my actual main league that's been going for, I think this is our 11th year. Started a while ago with some friends. It's a 12-team league, non-PPR, one quarterback league. We got 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, and a flex. And we actually just made a decision to add another flex and reduce the bench by 1. But it's pretty much the same thing either way for the purpose of mock drafting here. And then we also have a kicker and a defense. So kind of not what I prefer. We might get rid of the kicker at some point, but we kind of just do it to be it's, you know, kickers are a good time. I like to be in at least one kicker league for whatever reason. It's probably not smart, but the rush when your guy nails a 50-yarder, man, there's just nothing beats it. But enough yapping. Make sure to drop a like if you can, like wherever you're enjoying the podcast, and most importantly, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you are listening so that you can become a fantasy football prodigy. If you want video of the podcast, as I almost choked on my own saliva, whatever that was. If you want video, head over to the YouTube. Just look up Fantasy Football Prodigy, and we got the green logo there. And for a mock draft especially, it's even more helpful to see the draft board. I will do my best for my audio only listeners to kind of narrate what's going on. But you know, last time I did a mock draft, I said like the name, the position, the team of every single player that was drafted, and I'm just gonna not do that. I'm probably just gonna say the name, and hopefully, you know, we have some base of knowledge here of who these players are. But I'm going to be doing this mock draft on Fantasy Pros. The reason why I'm not adding that other flex to this mock draft is because apparently you get 1 free sync. And I already used it, and then we added the flex after that. So we're doing our draft on NFL.com. Again, kind of like the kicker. I know that's a little weird. I would recommend, you know, Sleeper, ESPN, which I have some leagues on as well. But again, this league is like over 10 years old, and we like to keep some tradition alive, I guess. So I think that this syncs with the platform's ADP. I could be wrong. If it doesn't, I'm not really sure what the point of syncing it is, other than like it auto-filling the positions for you. But I don't know. And hopefully the ADP isn't too different from your league to this, but do keep note that like each platform does have different ADPs. Okay, so in like on ESPN, there's some players that are bigger values than they are like on Sleeper, for example. So we are drafting from the 7th spot here, and we did a little duck race, a random name generator, to pick in what order we get to select our pick. So whoever's duck won the race. It's an online thing that we do, by the way, not real ducks or rubber ducks. Just it's like an online thing. So if your duck got first, you get to pick your draft spot first. So you're not necessarily the 101 if your duck wins. You just get to pick. So I got 3rd, luckily, out of 12. It's a 12-team league, non-PPR. And 5 and 6 were taken. So I was really torn between 4 and 7. I did probably 20 mock drafts the other night, and you know, I experimented with some other spots too. You know, like if you really want Jamar Chase, you know, go ahead and take the 1-1. But especially in a 12-team league, I really do prefer to kind of be in the middle, at least not like having the 1-1. For whatever reason, in this league, I've often had the 101, and I didn't want to do that. I like to have the flexibility of being able to play the draft board, play the waiting game, try to get my values, maybe, you know, have the ability to look at who has drafted and say, I'm going to wait, you know, to take that guy and hope they get back to me. Whereas if you're on the turn, if you're the 101 or the 112, you make your 2 picks in a row, and then you got to wait, you know, you got to wait for the board to go all the way down and all the way back until you're up again. If I was drafting from the 1-4, I really liked the idea of, you know, taking CeeDee Lamb or Jahmyr Gibbs in in this league. But I honestly kind of thought at the 107 here, an underrated strategy, in my opinion, especially in a non-PPR league, in fact, only in a non-PPR league, I would say, is going Derrick Henry with the 107, because, you know, the kind of top tier, I would say, in the eye of the public is Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, CeeDee Lamb, Saquon Barkley, and Justin Jefferson. Like, really, any of those guys could go, like, with the first or second overall pick, and you wouldn't be, like, shocked, right? Whereas Derrick Henry, he's often not going that high. And I understand, you know, he is an older player. He's 31 now, but, you know, he's still on the Ravens, and to me, he is one of the only few freaks in NFL history where I really don't care about his age. I believe he was a running back 2 last year. Yeah, he had 1,900 yards, 18 rushing touchdowns in his age 30 season. He's not a big pass catcher, but again, when you're running for that many yards on a great offense in Baltimore, and he's, you know, you're basically a lock for double-digit touchdowns. I think he's a very safe pick in the first round, which is weird to say about a running back in his 30s. But again, Derrick Henry is a freak of nature. He has the contract in Baltimore. He has no real competition in that backfield. I mean, they got Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill, Rasheen Ali. And, you know, the Ravens offense was humming last year, and they scored a ton of points. You know, it might be hard for them to replicate that type of production, but, you know, even if he takes a tiny step back, or that offense takes a step back, I really think that value at the 107 of getting Derrick Henry in a non-PPR league, with how the rest of the draft board plays out, with how little you have to wait for that second round pick, and the people who make it back to you in the third round, and then how it kind of trickles down, I really like drafting from this 1-7. So, you know, Nico Collins is on the board, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, even CMC here is tempting. But to me, I'm going to go with Derrick Henry. And that is my first round pick. So Puka, Amon-Ra, CMC, Malik Neighbors, Ashton Genty, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, Brock Bowers, the first tight end off the board, and we are back up again. So, taking a look at who is left here, running back wise, we got Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, kind of in that top tier. And then wide receiver, we got Drake London, AJ Brown, Ladd McConkey, T. Higgins. So this is kind of the trickiest spot here. Is I have found that if I don't come away with 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds here, I do become very dependent on a good running back making it back to me in the 4th. But with that being said, Drake London and AJ Brown, looking at our tier-based drafting here, are kind of the last of a certain tier where it's like they're kind of a locked and loaded wide receiver 1. And then in the 3rd round, that is also a place where, you know, I am tempted to sometimes take a tight end if it falls there, if it's George Kittle, Trey McBride. To me, Jonathan Taylor is the highest ranked running back here, and Drake London would be my highest ranked receiver. And we'll get to it later in the draft, but I really do love the wide receiver values later in the draft, where I'm okay taking Jonathan Taylor here. And as you see, okay, so 2 tight ends and 2 quarterbacks go off the board. So after JT, it was Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Drake London, Kyron Williams, AJ Brown, Ladd McConkey, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Trey McBride, and George Kittle at tight end, JSN, Omarion Hampton. And then at wide receiver, well, first of all, me taking a tight end is now off the board here because both went. In hindsight, you know, James Cook and Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Breece Hall, James Conner, TreVeyon Henderson, Alvin Kamara, those running backs are on the board. Would I rather have taken, you know, Drake London and paired them with James Cook or Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard? Maybe, but if I'm able to have my first wide receiver be one of T. Higgins, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not absolutely in love with that, but one interesting strategy that I have found at this 1-7 pick, at least in this mock draft that I've been doing quite a bit here, is when I take T. Higgins as my one, he's not necessarily a prototypical number one receiver just because he's a little bit boom bust at times. And he has struggled to stay healthy so far in his career. But especially last year, like when he was on the field, he was actually very dominant. Like he's really not that much behind Jamar Chase when you look at their production, and you know how much they're targeted, their target share, their first read targets, all that. So I'm not going to say I'm necessarily ecstatic about having him as my wide receiver one, but as you will see later in this draft, hopefully at least, we will be able to grab a few more receivers sort of as a stabilizing force in that receiving room. And also one strategy that I have been employing here in these drafts is if I'm not able to get McBride or George Kittle in the third round, I usually just wait on tight end. So we're going to draft T. Higgins here, and we'll see who comes back at running back. So I was going to say before I drafted, but there were quite a few decent running backs on the board. James Cook, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker, and Chuba Hubbard all go. I am also a fan here of James Conner and TreVeyon Henderson as potential running backs to add to the roster. And they are still on the board. But after Higgins, it was Tyreek Hill, Jaden Daniels, James Cook, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Kamara, Walker, Joe Burrow, Terry McLaurin, and Chuba Hubbard. So now I'm faced with the tough call here of, you know, do I go basically, is it running back or receiver? At this point, I don't really want to add Jalen Hurts. This is a fair place to draft him, but especially because I waited until the third round to go receiver, I might just wait on quarterback, and I'm not going to, you know, draft a Laporta or an Andrews here. To me, waiting for, you know, Ingram, Njoku, Kraft, Tyler Warren later in the draft is not much different than taking Laporta, Andrews, or Hawkinson, you know, earlier. So this is always kind of a tough call here. To me, the last two running backs that I'm really happy with having and I'd be comfortable starting are James Conner and TreVeyon Henderson. I do think Swift has some value. Montgomery has some value. Pollard has some value. But Conner and Henderson are kind of in their own tier to me. Whereas honestly, and this might sound crazy, but looking at the receivers, there are quite a few that, you know, I still like. Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton. We pretty much have 6 receivers there that I would be pretty comfortable with as, you know, getting as my receiver here. Oh man, this is actually a tough call. I've done a lot of mock drafts here, but that still doesn't make these decisions any easier. It is a little bit risky. The thing is, I'm not super in on Evans or Adams. Like, I think they're both good players. Evans is just getting older. They drafted Igbuka. Granted, Godwin is a little bit injured at this moment. And then Devontae Adams, I think he still has it, but I am a little worried about the health of Stafford. And because I do have Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor locked in as, like, you know, every week stud running backs, barring injury, you know, James Conner is probably a safer pick than TreVeyon Henderson here, but Henderson has bigger upside. And because I have those two locked in starters already, I'm going to see what happens if I take another running back here and put off that wide receiver 2 spot for at least one more round here. So we'll see who comes back to us. And okay, so Harrison, Adams, Evans, and Sutton go off the board. There's still a couple players here that I'm happy with as my wide receiver 2. So Jalen Hurts, Marv, James Conner, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, David Montgomery, RJ Harvey, Isaiah Pacheco, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, Cortland Sutton. You know, in this 5th round, the running backs and before the 4th round. So after Henderson and Conner, to me, there seems to be a bit of a tier break with David Montgomery, who I think will be solid, but are they going to score that many touchdowns in Detroit? Like, they had the most points per game in the league last year in Detroit. That's very hard to repeat. They lost their offensive coordinator. Their O-line is a little bit worse. And is Gibbs going to have more of that backfield? RJ Harvey, you know, he has a draft capital with Sean Payton and a good offense, but you know, J.K. Dobbins is looking like the starter to begin the year. Pacheco, I think, could be a value here. I think he might be a little bit overlooked, but that's a fair price for him. Swift, if he can keep his job, like, you know, he's not the most talented player in the world, but it could be a good offense in Chicago. or it might not be. So we'll see. And then Tony Pollard with Spears on IR as the backup running back there. He has that backfield to himself in what could be a very improved offense. So I like that pick there, probably the most out of all those guys. And then Aaron Jones, good offense, but he's getting older, and they brought in Jordan Mason, who I think is a better value overall than Jones. But out of those running backs, Tony Pollard really stands out as a solid option there. But I am now on the clock here, so I'm not going to take any of these running backs: Caleb Johnson, Tracy, Jordan Mason, Jalen Warren. Still not going to go with Laporta, Andrews, or Hawkinson at tight end. I'm not touching Mahomes with a 10-foot pole. Look, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and maybe the Chiefs decide to air it out, but they've been a very defensive-oriented team, and he has not needed to throw the ball down the field at all. His depth of target has gone down and down and down as the years have gone by. So I really am in need of a receiver here. And this is kind of the perfect outcome with what we started with here. DK Metcalf and Jameson Williams are two guys that I really do like. Jameson Williams to me has more upside and a little more risk, whereas Metcalf, he's the only target in town on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers is not what he once was, but he has still shown, even last year with the New York Jets, that he can get the ball to his main guy. He's going to hyper target his number one, and DK Metcalf is exactly that for Pittsburgh. He got traded there. He got the big contract, and I think Rodgers is still good enough to at least get him the ball when they throw it. I think they're going to try to run the ball quite a bit in Pittsburgh and play defense, but I think Metcalf is going to have a super high target share where he's a little bit safer than Jameson Williams. So even though, T. Higgins isn't necessarily my ideal type of wide receiver one, kind of adding that stabilizing force of DK Metcalf as my wide receiver two to kind of balance that out, I really do like that here. So we're going to draft DK Metcalf. After that, Rashee Rice, Tyrone Tracy, DJ Moore, Sam Laporta, Caleb Johnson, Mahomes, Zay Flowers, Tedero McMillan, Jalen Warren, Baker Mayfield. And then Jameson Williams actually made it back to me here in the 6th round. That to me just screams, value. I do like Worthy, Ridley, Pickens, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle here as well. But I think Jameson Williams to me is my favorite of that group. And let's be honest, like one of those guys could honestly make it back to me if the cards go the right way. But if not, then I'll have to deal with it. But Jameson Williams was actually a my guy in my most recent episode where we went over my top favorite my guys for each position. So Jameson Williams, I'm in love with him as a potential league winning type of player in the 6th round. He does have some risk, but at this value, I'm very happy to take that. So after Jameson Williams goes Jordan Mason, TJ Hawkinson, Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, Devontae Smith, Xavier Worthy, Javonte Williams, Zach Charbonnet, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, and then Ja'Cory Krosky. So the other day when I was doing these mock drafts, he was going a little bit later. So it looks like the ADP has kind of caught up now on this platform. But if you look at the wide receivers here in the 6th and the 7th and even the 5th round, if you get your running backs early, which is what I did, instead of taking, Drake London in the 2nd, I went with Jonathan Taylor. I might not have a top tier, AJ Brown or Drake London. Excuse me, I'm getting so excited about these receivers in my receiver room. But I mean, look at the wide receiver values compared to the running backs here. Well, Rashee Rice is not a good value. He just got suspended for 6 games, so do not take him in the 5th round. He should be, I wouldn't take him until we'll see once we get some names on the board, but probably 9th, 10th maybe. But Jordan Mason, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Zach Charbonnet, Ja'Cory Krosky, Warren is in a committee with Caleb Johnson, the rookie, most likely. Jordan Mason also in a committee, although I think he could be. I do like him as a value in general, but compared to these receivers, not really. Travis Etienne, the biggest bust in fantasy last year, could be better, than he was last year. But Javonte Williams will be the starter for Dallas. But again, some of these receivers like Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley, they have opportunities to be real difference makers here. Jameson Williams, Zach Charbonnet, he's going to be in a committee as well with Kenneth Walker. Granted, Walker always misses time, so he could be a good pick there. But these receivers in this range are just fantastic. And then I'm on the clock again. Not really into any of these running backs: Tank Bigsby, J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre, Cam Scadaboo, Austin Eckler. I am kind of hoping that Eckler falls to me later in the draft. But man, I am still into a lot of these receivers. I'm not going tight end with Andrews or Kelsey or Njoku yet. I think a lot of those guys are very similar. Although I do think Travis Kelsey gets a bit of a bump with that 6-game suspension. Dude, I just had some Takis, and I feel like it's messing with my respiratory system. You know, Takis are kind of like that sort of spicy, like, snack treat thing. But anyways, I digress. I'm really between George Pickens and Jalen Waddle here. I think Pickens has a better offense. I think Jalen Waddle is a great value in the 7th, and I did take him in a lot of mock drafts, but there's a lot of receivers I like here with Pearsall, Adunze, Igbuka, Judy, even like Travis Hunter, I think could be a steal here. So I am going to go George Pickens here, and we'll see, you know, who comes back to me here. So after Pickens of the Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver, it's Ramondre Stevenson, Jerry Jeudy, J.K. Dobbins, Justin Herbert, Travis Hunter, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, Emeka Egbuka, Chris Olave, and Cam Scadaboo. So I'm on the clock now. Eckler is there. That's a very intriguing pick to me after Brian Robinson Jr. got traded out of Washington. Looking at the receivers, you got Ricky Pearsall, Rome Odunze, Deebo Samuel, suspended Jordan Addison. To me, there really is a bit of a tier break here. In the receivers, I think Ricky Pearsall and Rome Odunze are kind of in their own tier to me, where, you know, after those two, I think the rest of the list is a little bit of a downgrade from there. And then looking at the running backs, I mean, the only one that I really love here at this point would be Austin Eckler, just because he was actually pretty good last year, even though the fantasy community has kind of forgotten about him. He really produced when he got a chance to play last year. And now that Brian Robinson Jr. is gone, I think that just secures his role even more. So, you know, I have Derrick Henry, I have Jonathan Taylor, I have Higgins, Metcalf, Williams, Pickens. Did I say Pickens? No, I said Higgins and Pickens. Those sound the same. Oh man, this is tough. I would probably go Pearsall over Odunze. Oof, duh. Oh man, that is tough. That is really tough. In all my mock drafts, I have not had to make this decision really. Will Eckler make it back to me? There's a handful of running backs there. Oh man, that is brutal. Because after Eckler, I mean, you got Braelon Allen, who I think is, you know, he could be a decent committee back. Trey Benson, Judkins, who knows if he's gonna play, what his role is gonna be. Other than that, it's like all handcuffs. As much as I love Pearsall and Odunze, oh guys, am I really gonna take like a 30-year? How old is he? He's literally 30. Oh man, I can't. And okay, so it's a 2 receiver, 2 flex. So this guy wouldn't even be starting because I'd have JT and Derrick Henry in the running back spot, Higgins and Metcalf at wide receiver, and then Jameson Williams, George Pickens, and TreVeyon Henderson to cycle in that flex. I'm going to go Ricky Pearsall. Wide receiver of the 49ers. He might be their wide receiver 1. Eckler goes with the very next pick, of course, and that was probably the hardest decision we have had to make here. And then Odunze goes next, who was my third choice there. Then Tank Bigsby, Deebo Samuel, who I think could be a great value here in the 8th round. Joe Mixon in the 8th. I'm not about that. I didn't even mention him because he might not play this year. Like he's not going to play to start the year, and the way the coaches are talking, he might miss the whole season. Quinshon Judkins, another guy who I would not be drafting here in the 8th round. Brian Robinson Jr., the backup in San Francisco. Nice little handcuff, I guess, in case CMC goes down. Jordan Addison, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Jacoby Myers, Stephon Diggs in the 9th. I love that value. I also love the value on Jacoby Myers, especially before that Amari Cooper signing. Now Jacoby Myers has requested a trade, so I don't love that value as much. But if things get kind of smoothed over there, I think that could be a good situation there. But looking at who's left on the board here, quarterback wise, Dak Prescott is very interesting here. After him, it's Brock Purdy, Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Drake May. To me, Dak Prescott is my favorite of those guys. Other than that, you got Braelon Allen, Trey Benson, Ray Davis, Nick Chubb, Rashad White, Tyler Algier. And what's important to note here is all 5 of the teams that are drafting between this pick and my next pick, they all have a quarterback already. Now, that doesn't mean they won't draft a quarterback, especially, this is a league with friends, and a lot of my friends like to draft, 2 quarterbacks for whatever reason. It's fun to them. But there's some skill position players here where I'm kind of fine waiting on quarterback at this point if the right guy is there. Keon Coleman I like here for upside. Jawan Jennings I liked early in this offseason. He's had that calf injury. How much of that is just him waiting for a contract versus actually being injured? I'm not sure. And then a tight end, we still got Andrews, Kelsey, Njoku, Kraft, Warren, Ingram. Those guys are all similar to me. So it's really between Dak Prescott and Braelon Allen or Trey Benson at this point. And just because I did not secure Austin Eckler in the last round, I would like to add to my running back room. So I'm going to go Braelon Allen and see who comes back to me at quarterback. And look at that. Dak Prescott came back to me. So after Braelon Allen, it was Tajay Spears, who's, I believe, starting the year in injured reserve, right? So that's a interesting pick. I don't want to edit. Okay, well, I think he's on IR. Chris Godwin. We'll see when he's on the field. That could be a very good steal there, because before he got hurt last year, he was one of the best receivers in all of fantasy. Cooper Kupp, Rashad White, Khalil Shakir, Jawan Jennings, Bayshaw Tootin, Travis Kelce, Michael Pittman, and Jaden Blue. I'm not going to play around anymore. Dak Prescott in the 10th round is ridiculous value. He was my quarterback, my guy, actually. And that's just insane value to get him here in the 10th round, double digits. He's been a top 12 quarterback like every season he's been healthy. He won people leagues a couple of years ago. And last year, after not having the best year and then getting injured, he's a little bit forgotten. And some of these guys later in the draft have some upside that I like. But to me, going into week 1 with Dak Prescott as my starter, I'm okay with that. Granted, he does open the season on the road against Philadelphia, but I'm going to take Dak here. After Dak, Keon Coleman, Jerome Ford, who might be the starter for the Browns here. Trey Benson, Nick Chubb, who might also be a starter here in the 10th round for the Houston Texans. So not bad values at all. Would I take Nick Chubb over Braelon Allen? I mean, maybe I should have. I just think that Houston backfield is going to be a little gross while Mixon is gone. But between him and Braelon Allen, I don't know. I think Braelon Allen is like a better player than a lot of the people on the Texans running back room right now. But yeah, I'm not sure. That's a tough one. Josh Downs, Brandon Ayuk in the 10th, who's going to start the year injured. Darnell Mooney, Jaden Higgins, Keenan Allen in the 11th. That's a sneaky little pick right there. Rashid Shaheed, Marvin Mims, Luther Burden. And then I'm on the clock once again. I could take my tight end here. But again, like Andrews, Njoku, Kraft, Warren, and Ingram are all in a similar tier for me, where I am very comfortable waiting. Now, in an actual draft with actual people, at least my friends that I draft with, a lot of them like to take multiple tight ends for whatever reason, even if they already drafted like a Bowers or a Kittle or a McBride. Like, they will take another tight end with good skill position players on the board. But the teams that are drafting between this pick and the next pick, 3 of them already have a tight end. So, and there's enough left where I'm comfortable that at least one of those guys will get back to me. So looking at the running backs and the receivers, you got Ray Davis, Algier, Sampson, Rico Dowdle, Isaac Garendo at running back. Ollie Gordon is on the board there. Ray Davis is intriguing. Not only is he a handcuff to James Cook, but he might have an actual role. Woody Marks is there in Houston. At wide receiver, Rashad Bateman is a potential value here. Someone you can put in your lineup any given week. My receiver room is pretty I don't want to say stacked, but I invested enough draft capital where I don't know if I need a guy like Bateman. I'd rather go upside with a guy like Cedric Tillman. And the other day when I was doing these drafts, Tillman was going a little bit later. Adam Thielen back on the Minnesota Vikings, skull baby. But I think Tillman is a very good value here. Dylan Sampson might be the starter for the Browns. So it's really between Tillman, who I think honestly out of all the receivers left is my clear favorite, so I might go with him. There's a lot of running backs in here that, are kind of like backups, handcuffs that, might get a chance to play and might not. I'm going to go Tillman, Cedric Tillman, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns. He had a little moment where he was pretty good last year. And with Joe Flacco as the starter, they cut Deontay Johnson. It's going to be Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman out wide, and then David Njoku at tight end. So I think that offense could be good. Trey Harris of the Chargers, who I'm not a huge fan of that pick just because I don't think he's going to see the field early on with the competition there. Like long-term dynasty, he might still have a shot, but after that, Christian Kirk, Denver Broncos DST, Kyle Williams, Mark Andrews, Rico Dowdle, Brock Purdy, Marquise Brown, Evan Ingram, and then Isaac Guerrero. And Guerrero would be a more intriguing pick earlier. I probably would have taken him already if they hadn't just traded for Brian Robinson Jr. in San Francisco. So if McCaffrey goes down, it might be a bit of a committee. And I believe they came out and said Brian Robinson Jr. is the official backup. So Ray Davis made it back to me. That's not a bad pick there. Rashad Bateman also made it back to me. Ollie Gordon is still there on the clock. He might start for the Dolphins depending on Achan's health. And then at tight end here, there's really only three that I like: Njoku, Tucker Kraft, and Tyler Warren. And I will say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 teams between when I'm drafting and my next pick. Only 3 of them have tight ends: McBride, Kittle, and Hawkinson. So you would think that those 3 wouldn't need a tight end, but even if just the other 3 teams each take a tight end, my guys are gone. So I'm gonna lock in my tight end spot here. It is a little gross going with the double Cleveland Browns because I just took Cedric Tillman. So if I knew Njoku would be here, maybe I would have taken someone else. But it's the 11th and 12th round, so it's not that big of a deal. It's more of a big deal when you're investing early round picks and players on the same team. But I'm going to go David Njoku here. Tyler Warren goes with the next pick. Oh, I'm glad I took a tight end here. Tyler Warren is not a bad pick there at all. I think Njoku is a little bit more of a sure thing, but Warren definitely has immense upside as a rookie on the Colts. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tight ends go off the board after I took Njoku. So very glad that I took a tight end there so I would not have to be starting Kyle Pitts. But Tyler Warren, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, who I think is a great value here, Drake May, another great quarterback value there. Caleb Williams in the 12th is also a good value. Like, I'm not sold that he's the real deal. Maybe he is based on last year. It wasn't. He isn't. He'll have to improve. But he could definitely develop. DeAndre Hopkins, Jonnu Smith, tight end, Dalton Kincaid, tight end, Tucker Kraft, tight end, Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, the Eagles defense, Colston Loveland, tight end. And then I'm on the board again here. Dylan Sampson is on the board at running back. Ollie Gordon, Blake Corum, Woody Marks, Kyle Monagai. Will Shipley is a good handcuff running back I like. Kendre Miller at wide receiver. Rashad Bateman is still on the board in the 13th round. That's a good value. I mean, that's a guy that you can put in your lineup every week, or not every week, but in a pinch, injuries, bye weeks, and he might get in the end zone. Adam Thielen got traded to the Vikings with Jordan Addison suspended. I mean, he's going to be the wide receiver 2 there. So, if I didn't have, solid receivers that I liked, if I went very running back heavy, drafted early quarterback, early tight end, that's someone who might get off to a hot start. And you could even take an upside tight end like Kyle Pitts to see if he becomes anything. It's not like I have a locked in tight end. Granted, I think Njoku in the 12th is a ridiculous value. I mean, in a real draft, I'm not sure he would last that long, but I'm really between Dylan Sampson and Ollie Gordon at running back, or taking my shot on another upside quarterback. I have Dak Prescott, but I've only invested a 10th round pick in the position. With that strategy, I'm totally cool. Taking another quarterback just to kind of see, if what happens. Maybe one of those guys becomes an every week starter. One you could trade. You could play matchups. But Jordan Love in the 13th is a ridiculous value. Like, if he was my week 1 starter, I wouldn't feel like euphoric about it, but I'd feel pretty okay. I'm gonna go with the running back though. Do I go Samson or do I go Ollie Gordon? I'm very invested in the Cleveland Browns right now, so I don't think I'm gonna go Samson. I'm gonna go with Ollie Gordon, who he was a really good prospect in college a couple years ago before he came out. The year before he declared for the draft, it was a little bit lackluster and he fell in the draft, but it seems like he might have passed Jalen Wright on the depth chart to be the number 2. And Devon Achane is dealing with a calf injury. So I'm going to take Ollie Gordon of the Miami Dolphins running back and see how that plays out. Jordan Love, Dylan Sampson, Jake Ferguson, Commanders defense, Kyle Pitts, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, Chris Rodriguez, Kyle Mongai, Jalen McMillan. And then I am on the board again. Running backs, we got Woody Marks, Will Shipley, Kendre Miller is the number 2 for New Orleans. He's actually stayed healthy. I could, nab Keaton Mitchell and have my handcuff. I'm not a big fan of getting handcuffs of my own running backs usually. Maybe for a 31-year-old, it's better to do that, but it's not really the type of thing where it's a clear handcuff. Like, if Henry were to go down, I'm sure Justice Hill would also be involved. And it would probably be a gross situation. And interesting enough, Rashad Bateman is still on the board. Looking at these late tight ends here, there's some guys that will get you production, like Goddard, Henry, Zach Ertz. Brenton Strange is a nice sleeper option there. K-Dot, but Chig Okonkwo is an athletic freak at tight end who actually could be a real difference maker if he gets a shot. Otherwise, I'm really looking at, maybe adding another depth quarterback for upside, like JJ McCarthy, Trevor Lawrence with all those weapons, CJ Stroud for the bounce back. And he's fallen so much, and he could be a real value here. Cam Ward, the rookie. I'm going to decide between Will Shipley and Chig Okonkwo here. That's tough. I think week 1, we'll see if Chig Okonkwo is involved. If I don't know if Will Shipley's going to get drafted here. There's still a couple rounds left, so he probably will. But we were thinking of removing another bench spot. So hypothetically, maybe he would be on waivers, but that's a situation where he's the clear backup behind Saquon. That's only someone you would want, if Saquon were to go down. Whereas week 1, you can see, like, is Chig Okonkwo involved in this offense? Is he going to be like a great value, or is he really not that involved? And can I cut him and pick someone else up? So I'm going to go Chig. After that, Woody Marks, Roshan Johnson, Rashad Bateman, Will Shipley, DJ Giddens, Marshawn Lloyd, Steelers, Vikings defense, Brandon Aubrey at kicker, Seahawks defense, Kareem Hunt, Bills defense, and then I'm on the board. Normally, in a spot like this, I like to not draft my not draft my kicker or DST and just pick them up off of waivers the day before the game starts. But just for this exercise, I am going to go and draft someone, especially because we are drafting like pretty shortly before the season starts. So even if I draft another player, I'm only going to have him for like a little bit. But Kendre Miller, Keaton Mitchell at running back, those would be good options. Taj Brooks, Miles Sanders are intriguing options as backup running backs. Taking one of those young quarterbacks, see what they do. Receivers, really not a ton here. Pat Bryant, if you scroll down a little bit, he is someone who is a very, very good late round pick. And I wish we didn't have kickers and defenses, but I still could draft him and stash him because that is someone who I would love to draft and stash. Kicker wise, there's some people. I'm not gonna really expand on the kickers. Defensively, who's got a good week 1 matchup? I'm literally just gonna Google. I know the Cardinals have a good matchup. They're always available at the spot. The Broncos got taken. Steelers. You know what? I'm gonna take a good kicker. Who's the best kicker? Week 1. Jake Bates. He's the Lions kicker. Cameron Dicker. That's his name. You can't get mad at me. For the Chargers, I'm gonna go with Dicker just because that's a funny name. And then 49ers, Ravens defense, Keaton Mitchell, Dallas Goedert, Texans defense, Bates, Fairbairn. He was really good last year. Maybe I should have gone Fairbairn. I had him in this league last year, and he put in work, bro. He got me like to the championship. Also, you know, Saquon Barkley and Jahmyr Gibbs also did that, but got second place. I don't want to talk about it. I think Fairbairn had a really bad game in the championship, didn't he? In week 17. It doesn't let you see. I want to click the player. I think he did. Anyways, Chase McLaughlin, Harrison Butker, Tyler Bass, and then I'm going to take a defense here. I'm just looking at this sheet. I think the Cardinals have a good week 1 matchup, don't they? They play New Orleans Saints. That's probably going to be the best matchup all year. I'm going to take the Saints defense. They give me a 92 out of 100. That is bull crap. That should be 100 out of 100. 99 at least. Will Lutz, Chris Boswell, Evan McPherson, Chiefs defense, Jake Elliott, and Younghoe Koo to round out the draft. A little bit of a strategy tip here for you guys. If your league does have defenses, don't just draft the number 1 overall defense. Like, you know, the Ravens and Chiefs have good defenses. They're playing each other week 1. You know what I mean? So you're not going to want to start the Ravens or this. Did I say the Ravens or the Bills? I meant to say that if I didn't. The Ravens and the Bills play each other in week 1. Like, you don't want to play a defense against either of those offenses, right? Like, you don't want to like pick up the Cowboys because they're playing the Eagles. Like, you kind of want to stream the position. That's always been the best move, in my opinion. Like, maybe you can get lucky and draft the best overall defense that becomes an every week start. But that team is very rarely the same as it was the year before, if ever, which I don't even know if it ever happens. So how do I see my team? I want to see my team, please. Oh, okay. So no, I don't like how they did that. I do not like how they did that. View by rounds. Okay. So my team, I got Dak Prescott at quarterback. At running back, I got Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, the rookie TreVeyon Henderson for the Patriots, and then Braelon Allen and Ollie Gordon on the bench. At wide receiver, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Jameson Williams, George Pickens, Ricky Pearsall, Cedric Tillman, and then at tight end, I picked up David Njoku, and I'm stashing Chig Okonkwo just to see what happens. And then Cameron Dicker and the Cardinals defense, who are taking on the Saints in week 1 and probably Spencer Rattler. I like this team. I really have found that going running back early helps a lot. I will say, if George Kittle would have fallen to me in the 3rd and I took him instead of Higgins, you know, I probably would have had to go Mike Evans or Devontae Adams instead of TreVeyon Henderson in the 4th, you know, which would have had a ripple effect all the way down of needing kind of a 3rd running back. So all in all, running backs are hard to come by. Maybe it's a thing where I would have, you know, tried to get, hopefully a running back would have fallen to me in the 5th. There really wasn't anyone good that I would have wanted looking at the board here. Like, I would have hated to have to take like Jordan Mason over, you know, Jameson Williams. I definitely would have gone Austin Eckler over Pearsall in that situation because it was already close. But if I would have needed a running back, I think Eckler is going to be a guy that you can put in there week 1 and he's going to be like relevant. So, anyways, solid team. I'm going to win my league if my my actual draft goes like this. But hopefully, you know, you can mock draft all you want, but once you're in there, like, you got to adjust. If I was able to wait until the 12th on a really good tight end, David Njoku, but in real life, you know, I might not be able to do that. Like, the Hawkinson got drafted in the 6th, and then another tight end didn't get drafted until the 10th. Like, that's probably not going to happen in real life. So again, though, you don't want to react to runs on positions and reach too high on someone. So that's going to do it for the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. As always, remember to drop a like on the video or podcast wherever you're enjoying, if that's something you can do, and make sure to follow or subscribe so you can become a fantasy football prodigy yourself. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.